I'm Camille West, 29, and somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of this family and became something they managed. My half-brother Jude, the pride of the household, never had to ask for love, money, or applause, it was just given. But me? I earned everything and still got silence. When they asked me to plan his wedding, I said yes. Not because I wanted to, because I thought, maybe this time, they'd see me. Not as the helper. Not as the fallback. Just as Camille. Turns out, they didn't want me seen. They wanted me gone. It happened the week before the wedding. We were all seated around my father's dinner table, the one I refinished last winter while they vacationed in Maine. Jude was listing things he wanted upgraded, more flowers, a different band, imported linens. I explained the costs were already covered, the deposits paid, and my savings nearly gone. He didn't care. Just fix it, he said, not looking up. And then my stepmother looked me in the eye and said, Camille, the best gift you can give this family is not showing up at all. My father didn't disagree. He just nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I sat there while the silence hardened around me like cement. I thought about the vendors I'd paid up front. The venue I fought to reserve. The money I hadn't replaced. I thought about the nights I skipped dinner to work through table plans, the emails I answered at midnight, the apology texts I sent for things that weren't my fault. I thought about all the ways I'd tried to matter. Then I stood up, folded my napkin, and said, all right. Just that. Not another word. My keys were in my coat pocket. I walked out. At home, I made tea I wouldn't drink and opened my laptop. The spreadsheet was still open from earlier, budget tabs, vendor contracts, everything neat and controlled, unlike me. I didn't rage. I just got to work. One by one, I started undoing the wedding I built. I called the florist, then the band, then the caterer. I didn't lie. I just said the plans had changed. I asked for refunds where I could, and where I couldn't, I made peace. I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it because I no longer owed them a perfect day. By morning, the wedding had no music, no flowers, no food, just a venue and a list of expectations they could no longer afford. Maeve texted me, short and nervous. Did something happen? I didn't answer. I wanted to. She wasn't cruel, just complicit. She saw the cracks in that family and chose to look away. Maybe she thought marrying into it meant inheriting their silence. I didn't blame her. I just wasn't going to explain myself anymore. Let them wonder. Let them make calls. Let them fix what they assumed would be taken care of. Let them feel the absence. Jude called that afternoon. He didn't ask how I was. He asked what I'd done. You've ruined everything, he said, voice tight, like I'd spilled wine on a tuxedo, not gutted the ceremony. I told him calmly I stopped paying for it. He said I was being dramatic, that mom didn't mean it, that dad was tired. I let him talk. I let him excuse them. Then I asked, did you mean it? He didn't answer. The silence stretched until he hung up. And I knew then, they weren't sorry. They were just surprised I finally believed them. Later that night, I got a voicemail from my stepmother. Her voice was cold, controlled. You've embarrassed us, Camille. Do you understand what you've done? I did. I understood better than she thought. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be a burden. Trying to help. To fix. To earn. All I ever got was the weight of their convenience. The wedding was supposed to be my final try. My big chance to be valued. Instead, it became the moment I saw clearly. They never planned to give me a seat at the table. Only a role in the background. The next morning, I got dressed slowly, made real breakfast for once, and didn't check my phone. I didn't feel triumphant. Just steady. I sat on the balcony, coffee warm in my hand, and watched the city wake up without me. No more lists. No more phone calls. No more bending myself into something palatable. The wedding would still happen, maybe. Maybe not. But without me, it would echo. Because when the one who holds it all together walks away, the silence doesn't just fall, it stays. And this time, they'd feel every second of it. Years ago, I landed my first major contract, a $45,000 marketing campaign for a regional food chain, months of work lined up, a foot into the industry I'd worked so hard to break. I remember sitting in my apartment, grinning alone, imagining what doors it would open. That same night, my father called. The candle store, Port and Wick, was going under. Suppliers had pulled, rent was late, inventory unsellable. "It's bad, Camille," he said, voice low, like he couldn't admit it louder. My stepmother said they were days away from losing everything. I didn't think. I just offered help. I canceled the contract the next morning. Called the executive myself, told him I'd overcommit. He didn't get angry. Just said, "Shame. You were the one we wanted." I told him I'd circle back someday. I never did. I spent the next 3 months inside the failing business I was raised to respect. Rebranded it from scratch. New product shots. SEO. Holiday bundles. Social media strategy they didn't understand, but let me run. Sales doubled. Orders returned. My father told his friends we were back on track. My stepmother smiled again. But they never mentioned my name when they said saved. I didn't ask for recognition. I just hoped it would arrive eventually, quietly maybe. A thank you. A nod. Anything. It didn't. One evening, my father called a family meeting. I thought maybe he'd talk succession, hand me equity, tell me it was mine. Instead, he handed everything to Jude. He knows contracts, my stepmother said, like law school translated to logistics. Jude hadn't answered a single vendor email. He hadn't stocked a shelf. But he was their choice. Again. I stared at the office I'd rebuilt, the scent of wax and lavender still warm in the air, and said nothing. Jude's first move was to rework the website. "It's too wordy," he said, before uploading a slideshow of poorly lit product shots and stock phrases like, "Elevate your ambience." My branding disappeared within weeks. He forgot to tag inventory, missed reorder alerts, ignored complaints. My father blamed algorithms. My stepmother blamed shipping. But never Jude. I kept the books balanced behind the scenes, paid late invoices from my savings just to avoid embarrassment. "You're a team player," my father said once, without looking up. But I wasn't part of the team. I was the safety net they refused to acknowledge. Nathan was the only one who saw what it was costing me. "You're holding up a business that pretends you don't exist," he said one night, watching me sort through supplier quotes at a diner booth. "They don't deserve that." I knew he was right, but I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. I kept thinking if I fixed one more thing, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at Jude. But I was chasing a currency they never planned to give me. I wasn't family. I was infrastructure. And even infrastructure gets torn down when the shine fades. I stopped correcting Jude after a while. Let him mislabel scents, underpriced bundles, run promos during supplier shutdowns. He thought he was being innovative. My father called him bold. Customers called less. Reviews dipped. Return rates spiked. I watched it quietly, not with malice, but with clarity. I had spent years building a business they let someone else crash in slow motion. My stepmother said, "We're just in a rough patch." I nodded. She didn't notice I'd already pulled my name from the financials. I had started documenting everything: ownership splits, silent contributions, the $5,000 investment they never signed for. Proof. I took a walk one afternoon, ended up outside a bank I didn't plan to visit, and withdrew every cent of what I'd put into Port and Wick. No notice. No warning. Just clean separation. When the balance cleared, I stared at the receipt for a long time. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like relief. That evening, I deleted every login I'd created, unsubscribed from vendor accounts, and let them figure out what silence looked like when it came from the only person holding the system up. I didn't owe them another hour. Or another ounce of belief. They found out days later. Jude called first, panicked, asking why orders weren't syncing, why vendors weren't responding. I told him I'd stepped away. He said I was abandoning them. "You never saw me," I said. "So don't pretend you're surprised." My father left a voicemail I didn't listen to. My stepmother sent a single text, "You're being dramatic." But I wasn't. I was just finished. I had saved their business. Rebuilt it. Funded it. Carried it. Then erased myself from it. Cleanly, professionally, without a single raised voice. It wasn't loud. But it was final. And that was enough. The wedding was still on. Jude hadn't canceled a thing. He just hoped enough duct tape would hold it together, that vendors I'd paid would magically reappear, that someone else, anyone else, would do what I'd always done. They kept me out of the group chats, out of the planning folder. Maeve tried once, sending me a tentative message, "We could use your help." I didn't respond. My savings sat at 10,000, refunded piece by piece from the wreckage they called a celebration. I watched from a distance, quiet and unbothered. Let them feel what absence does to ceremony. They thought I'd flinch, that I'd come crawling back to protect their image. But I didn't. Instead, I listed my freelance business online, nothing flashy, just a quiet offer to sell. A local agency reached out within days. We met over coffee. I showed them the portfolio, the contracts, the client roster. "You built all this alone?" the buyer asked. I nodded. No team. No backing. Just years of being underestimated and still delivering. They offered 25,000. I took it. No negotiation. I didn't need more. I needed gone. The papers were signed before the coffee even cooled. Next was the apartment. A shoebox above a florist shop, noisy pipes, no parking, but it had held me through every version of myself. I donated furniture, sold what I could, packed 2 suitcases and a laptop. No ceremony. No sentimentality. Asheville had been calling for years, its quiet hills and rented warmth. I booked a one-way ticket. No goodbyes. Nathan offered to drive me to the station, but I declined. I didn't want a memory of leaving. I just wanted the silence after. I walked out with nothing left behind but an empty set of keys on the counter. The fallout came fast. Nathan texted updates, brief and sharp. The wedding unraveling by the hour. The venue underprepared. Vendors demanding full balances. Guests asking questions. No music. No flowers. A forgotten cousin sent a photo of the reception hall, bare tables, folding chairs, a single banner drooping above an untouched buffet line. Maeve stood in the corner, pale and exhausted. Jude looked like someone handed him a mirror. No one said my name. They never would. But everyone felt the shape of what was missing. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just stepped away and let the weight shift. A week later, the store folded. Vendors stopped delivering. Customers left. Jude's photos stopped appearing online. Their statements went from rebranding to restructuring to silence. I didn't gloat. I just didn't look back. My absence wasn't revenge. It was release. My stepmother sent a short email. Disappointed doesn't cover it. She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask why. Just blame, as always. My father didn't reach out. He never liked using words. I forwarded the email to an empty folder titled Closure, then deleted it. I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. They weren't owed an explanation. Only distance. In Asheville, I rented a one-bedroom with a window facing the mountains, tall enough to watch fog move like breath. I unpacked slowly. A bed, a chair, a desk. No family photos. No reminders. I started building a new client list, reached out to local businesses, rewrote my pitch deck. I didn't chase perfection. I just worked. Small shops. Honest brands. Enough to start over. I walked downtown without anyone knowing my name. No reputation to clean. No expectations to crush me. For the first time in years, I felt room. Not success, not validation, just room to exist differently. Shirley, the bakery owner, was the first to remember my name. She gave me a warm scone and told me I looked tired, but strong. "You left something bad," she said without needing the story. That's never weakness. She introduced me to a bookstore owner who needed rebranding, then a hiking shop looking for online traffic. I didn't tell them what I'd left. I just listened, built, delivered. Clients paid on time. Projects wrapped cleanly. No drama. Just respect. Quiet wins stacked like stones. Asheville didn't clap for me, but it made space. And sometimes, space is louder than applause. Jude tried once more. A voicemail. No apology. Just bitterness. "You're selfish, Camille. You cost us everything." I didn't delete it. I saved it. Proof that, even in failure, he couldn't look inward. They never saw me as a person, only a function. And when that function stopped functioning, they broke. That wasn't my burden. That was the truth they kept denying. I didn't reply. I walked outside instead, felt the air, the quiet, the peace that came from not being needed by people who never valued me. I didn't burn bridges. I just never crossed theirs again. 3 weeks after I left, Maeve posted a new profile photo, her and Jude, smiling beside a rushed bouquet under a weak canopy of string lights. The caption read, "Not perfect, but still beautiful." It was meant for me. Every pixel. I didn't engage. I let the image pass like smoke. Nathan texted, "They're trying to reframe it." Of course they were. That's what they'd always done. Rewrite, repost, reshape. Jude's voice still echoed in my head, calling me selfish, like contribution only counted when it came without boundaries. But I'd learned, you can't fill a cup with no bottom. The candle store didn't just collapse, it unraveled. Jude hired a marketing intern, a friend's niece, barely out of college. He gave her my old login, my campaign folder, my ad copy. I saw it all online. My captions recycled. My slogans reworded. My photos used without credit. It wasn't subtle. It was replacement. Fast and thoughtless. But the numbers didn't lie. Engagement flatlined. Orders dropped. Customer comments turned frustrated, then silent. Nathan said, "They thought your work was easy to duplicate." I said nothing, because it wasn't about theft. It was about erasure. And that's what they were best at. I documented everything. Quietly. Screenshots, timestamps, invoice records. Not to sue, that wasn't my story. Just to have it, in case someone ever dared ask. What did you even do? I could show them. All of it. The designs, the growth charts, the voice that held their brand together. But no one asked. Jude spiraled instead, tried influencer discounts, TikTok giveaways, bulk coupons for products no one wanted anymore. The store felt empty even online. No tone. No core. Just noise. And I didn't need revenge. Their unraveling was public, undeniable, and most importantly, unaided by me. My stepmother sent one last message. Just 2 lines. "You think you're better than us now. Don't forget who you are." I stared at the words, unread for hours. Who I was. She meant the girl who showed up without being asked, stayed silent when disrespected, fixed what they broke without thanks. That girl was gone. I replied with just one sentence. "You don't get to name me anymore." Then I blocked her. Not in rage. In finality. Nathan said, "You're colder than I've ever seen you." I smiled. I'm cleaner than I've ever felt. Coldness is what happens after fire clears. In Asheville, I kept building. A local brewery signed me to design their fall campaign. Then a women's co-op reached out for branding help. Each project sharpened my name, my presence, my value. No one asked for discounts. No one called me dramatic. They paid full price, said thank you, referred their friends. I updated my portfolio. Bought a used car. Got new business cards printed, just my name in clean serif font, no family ties in sight. People didn't know my history here. They just knew my work. And that was enough. More than enough. For the first time. I walked past a boutique one morning, saw my design in the window, a fall banner I'd made, soft tones, clean typography. The owner caught me staring. "You Camille?" she asked. "I love your work." Simple words, but they landed like something sacred. I thanked her. Walked on. Let it sit. This was what acknowledgement felt like without strings. Without blood. Just merit. And when I got home, I didn't cry. I lit a candle, one I'd bought myself, not one from the store I saved, and let the flame burn slow. Not symbolic. Not angry. Just mine. Nathan visited that month. He stood in my kitchen, holding a cup of coffee, watching the quiet unfold. "This place fits you," he said. I nodded. "It doesn't ask for anything." He smirked. "Except rent." We laughed. For once, it didn't feel like escaping. It felt like arriving. He offered to take me hiking. I said yes. The climb wasn't steep, but it was long, and by the time we reached the overlook, the wind was sharp and clean. He looked at me. "You're not just surviving anymore." I said nothing. Just looked out. Let the silence answer for me. They stopped trying eventually. No more voicemails. No more posts. No more versions of the story where I was the villain. Jude returned to his law job, quieter now. The store's account went dark. My stepmother faded from social feeds. My father's silence never changed. But absence has its own language. I never responded. Not because I couldn't, but because nothing I said would matter more than what I didn't. That's what they'll remember, not the noise I made, but the clean space I left behind. And that's the kind of ending you don't argue with. You just live through. It came in a white envelope with no return address. My name, handwritten, no stamp. Inside, 2 sheets, folded once. The first, from my father. A single paragraph. Your stepmother's not well. The doctors say it's serious. We don't have help. Think about coming home. The second was from her. Shorter. Family means showing up, even when it's hard. I held both pages like they were written by strangers. I wasn't angry. Just stunned they still believed access was entitlement. That love was a lever they could pull when they ran out of labor. This wasn't a request. It was a trap. I took the letter to Shirley. She read it once and didn't flinch. They're not asking for you, she said, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. They're asking for your service. I nodded. I'd known that before I walked in. But hearing it said aloud made it solid. Nathan's call later that night was blunt. You go back now, they'll never let you leave again. He was right. I didn't respond to the letter. Didn't burn it, either. I folded it once more, slid it into a drawer, and closed it slowly. Some decisions don't need noise to hold. I wrote a reply anyway. Not to send, just to say it once. I hope she heals. But I'm not returning. You made it clear who I was to you. I'm choosing peace. I signed it with my full name, not the one they gave me, the one I kept. Then I deleted the document. Because closure doesn't require communication. It only requires certainty. That weekend, I bought paint for my apartment walls. Sage green. Clean and quiet. A color with no memory. I rolled it on slowly, corner to corner, erasing beige, the shade of waiting, of being ignored. The next month, I launched a new campaign. Tourism board. 6-month contract. My pitch beat out a firm with 12 employees. They called me small but surgical. I liked that. I moved my desk near the window. Lit another candle. Not one of theirs, I'd stopped buying those. This one was mine. Hand-poured, soft pine scent. No label. Just presence. Clients kept coming. Word of mouth. Referrals. No ads, no begging. Just a name that meant delivery. That was the justice. Not courtrooms or confrontations. Just results. Me steady, solvent, chosen. Everything they refused to believe I could be. Maeve sent a message in late fall. 3 words, she's not doing well. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because caring doesn't mean returning. It took years to learn that. I let the message sit unread. Days passed. No follow-up. Just silence. That was their pattern now, push, then vanish. I walked to the bakery, ordered my usual, took a seat by the window. Shirley set down my tea without asking. They'll reach again, she said. And again. I nodded. And I'll stay here. I didn't say it to sound strong. I said it because it was already true. I ran into Maeve once, months later, in a bookstore in Asheville. She looked smaller, unsure. I looked up first. She said, "You look, well." I nodded. "I am." We stood there a second too long, then she said, "They didn't know how to love you right." I didn't answer. Not because I disagreed, but because I'd stopped needing that confession. She waited, then added, "They talk about you like you disappeared." I smiled. I didn't disappear. I just left where I wasn't seen. She nodded once, slowly, and walked away. No tears. No hugs. Just the quiet closure we never got. Nathan visited again in spring. He noticed the new furniture, the fresh paint, the calm. "So this is the life you made," he said, settling in. I handed him a cup of coffee. "No," I said. "This is the life I claimed." He didn't argue. We sat on the balcony, overlooking the hills. He asked if I missed them. I didn't lie. Sometimes. But I don't return to what broke me. The wind moved gently through the trees, no drama, just presence. He looked over, smiled. You finally let them go. I exhaled, like it had taken years to do so. It had. Closure doesn't always come in confrontation. Sometimes, it comes in repetition, a morning with no phone call, a night without defending yourself, a week of work you get credit for. That's what I'd built, a life no one could take credit for but me. I didn't need them to crumble. I just needed to not hold them up. I walked past a florist, smelled eucalyptus, remembered my old life, and kept walking. No longing. No rage. Just understanding. They taught me how not to love. And I used it to build a world where I could finally love myself fully. Asheville settled around me like quiet affirmation. The city didn't need my story to welcome me. It just needed my presence. I joined a local co-op for women-led businesses. Sat in on workshops. Offered feedback on branding, voice, vision. No one asked where I came from. They just listened when I spoke. Shirley brought me pastries during late nights, called me a fixture now. I laughed, but knew what she meant. I wasn't temporary anymore. Not filling space. I belonged here fully. The kind of belonging that didn't demand blood or sacrifice. Just consistency. The kind I'd always given freely. I painted again. Not for profit, not for praise. Just watercolors on thick paper, scenes of mountains and fog, quiet colors that said what words never could. Shirley framed one and hung it behind the bakery counter. Told you you'd bloom, she said. I didn't argue. I started hiking more, longer trails. Sunrise hikes with packed granola, thermos of coffee, sketchbook in my bag. No rush. No inbox waiting. Just space. And as I moved through each trail, each new client, each ordinary day, I realized I was no longer proving anything. I was just living. And that was everything. Nathan called less often, but the calls meant more. We didn't rehash the past. Just shared updates, small victories, the occasional silence. You sound different, he said once. You sound rested. I was. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped dragging dead weight behind me. The work I did now didn't come with panic. My days ended with peace. I'd built something better than revenge. I'd built rhythm. I didn't need vindication from people who couldn't name my worth. My worth had a pulse now, and it beat without their permission. That was more than enough. One morning, I received a package. No return address, just a brown box with careful handwriting. Inside, a photo album. Cheap plastic sleeves. The first page, a picture of me, younger, adjusting a display in the candle shop. Then flyers I designed, old emails printed out, newspaper clippings I hadn't saved. The last page held a note. We didn't see it then. But we do now. No signature. I closed the album. I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. Sometimes recognition comes too late. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I slid the album on a shelf and moved on. Maeve remarried. A quiet ceremony in Vermont. Nathan forwarded me the announcement. Jude wasn't in the photos. I read the caption. Love looks different this time. That was all. I didn't feel anything, not bitterness, not triumph. Just distance. The kind that makes old wounds feel like someone else's story. My phone buzzed with a new client inquiry. I replied, set a meeting, moved forward. Jude hadn't reached out since the voicemail. My stepmother hadn't written again. My father remained a permanent silence. And that was fine. Some people vanish not with drama, but with disuse. Like tools you no longer need. I hosted a dinner once. Just 4 friends. Candlelight, soup, music low in the background. Shirley brought bread. A client-turned-friend brought wine. We ate, laughed, shared nothing performative. No roles, no rivalry. Just presence. I sat back for a moment and watched it all, this life I'd built, not in defiance of what I lost, but entirely separate from it. The proof wasn't in who noticed me now. It was in who never made me shrink. The table felt full. My chest felt quiet. No waiting to be chosen. No hoping to be praised. I already had everything I needed. The store in Erie became a thrift shop. The candle shelves gone. The layout rearranged. Nathan sent a photo. Look familiar? I shook my head. Not anymore. I meant it. The building was theirs. But the meaning? That had been mine. And I'd taken it with me. Some stories don't end with applause. Just with the soft close of a door that no longer needs to stay open. I didn't haunt the past. I didn't visit. I let it reduce itself without my help. That's not cruelty. That's survival. That's what happens when you leave for real and never circle back. There was no final triumph. No viral post. No dramatic confrontation. Just a woman with clean hands, stable income, warm bread, and silence she didn't have to earn. My name meant something now, not to them, but to the people who paid, who listened, who stayed. I didn't get the apology. I got peace. And between the two, only one lets you sleep. Closure was never about answers. It was about permission. To stop bleeding. To stop begging. To stop waiting. And so I did. I arrived. Not in anyone's shadow, not through anyone's grace, but wholly, fiercely, beautifully, mine.